Hello, ladies. I want to really say thank you for having me on this platform. I really honestly do not take this for granted. Anytime I'm asked to share my experiences. Okay, so for me, my great story. This topic had helped me look back at my life journey up from when I started making decisions on my own, started knowing God. I mean, being able to have God influence my decisions through life, all and through all that I've been through. So my great story, I would say, in a nutshell, it's been my life had been a life of process. Yeah, process. It is that's been a summary of my life so far. um it has been a very tough one. But I mean, God's grace has been sufficient for me. I remembered since I gave my life to Christ in February 2008. It's been from one step of knowing God to another step of knowing God, to God unveiling himself in one way, unveiling himself in another way. It's just indeed been process for me. I remembered when I was in school, and how God saw me through the process of schooling. The friends I met, the difficult courses that I went through. I remember particularly how that I was just like every other person. I just finished my secondary school. I wanted to study medicine. And then I I mean, I didn't meet up with the cut of mark for medicine for OAU. Then I remembered how that I was in Lagos here in my auntie's place, and then my dad called me. They got a form for me to study social work. I was like, what is social work? you know, and sometimes these decisions are really for me. I've not genuinely said that this is what I want, and just what I want to study and actually get it. It's always like, okay, God has a way of, altering the things I really honestly desire. It's not like sometimes it might be. I know that it's in line with God's will, but at the end of the day, but initially I'm like, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. But I mean, I've come to know that it's not just what I want, is what God has destined for me. So going through, I finished school. My father called me up one day and said he got a form for me to study social work. I was like, social what? I had never in my entire life, had that course before. Talk more of studying it. So I got back. I actually did the course. It was a DLC course, distant learning. And I was like, all my mates are in actual universities, like, actual school, first semester, second semester, and then I'm doing distant learning. Like, it was hard for me to fathom, because I remember I knew that I remember telling my dad that, Daddy, I'm like, part-time is for people that don't. I had this ideology that part-time schooling is for people that are not intelligent. That was my ideology way back as at 2008 and all. So my dad insisted and said, no, I have to, that this course is good, this that. And then, but one thing that I know that God used that period was because it was a real disagreement in my family. I'm grateful first for the fact that my parents are Christians. I was raised in a Christian home, So my dad said that's what God said, and I didn't hear, but that's what God said. And then look, he took me to people who had become mentors in my life today, and they were telling me, I mean, it's not where you start from, it's where you're headed. I didn't understand that statement until when I was in 300 level, when the reality of God's purpose started. I mean, the reality of purpose and me wanting to live a life of purpose, started. I started, coming to that understanding of living a life of purpose, and then I realized that truly studying social work was God's will for my life. And yes, was it easy initially? No, but I went through that phase. I studied the course. It was something that really aligned with my personality, something I really loved. I'm doing stuff with doing stuff using with the knowledge of social work that I learned, and that's first a step of my life that I started understanding God's will for my life. Let me tell you one categorically, God's will when it comes to me, Chidima, it has not been an easy decision initially for me, but at the end of the day, I've looked throughout the years, all through the years, I've seen that God's will truly, really, 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 really always play out for me. It will always be it at the end of the day. The decision to take it up, to say, okay, I want to go after God's will, and it might be difficult initially accepting it, but at the end of the day, I see that yes, this is actually God's will for my life. The blessings that come with it, the lessons that come with it, the opportunities that God bring, using that just being obedient to Him. So that's one part of my life. I remembered finishing, all out. I was just there. No job, because I felt, how come they allowed me to go and study a course that my job is not in Nigeria? I remember many times. But God has a way of aligning, making all things work together for good. So I remember it was then 2014 I started learning how to I went into fashion. So yeah, fashion, I started fashion designing in 2014, and that's what I'm doing even till date. But before then, I went back to school for my master's. I have a master's in just counseling psychology. I remember that during that period, my family couldn't afford masters for me. So, and I went to God in prayer because I was sure that that's what they wanted me to do at that time. So I took it to Him in prayer. God, this is my heart desire. How do you fund this? How do we go about it? My slogan then was, God, you own my life. You own my life. You had written the script. It's just, I'm just living the part. It was like that for me. So when I go to God in prayer, I said, God, I come before you. This is my heart desire. I know that you have written the script, and then mine, I'm just living the part. So at this point, what do you want me to do? And then the idea of the masters came in. I knew we couldn't afford it in my home, and then I told God, one of my uncles was planning on visiting us, and I knew he was going to ask me what's my plan. As I told God, when he asked me, this is what I would tell him, that this is my plan and all. And I was specific. I told God, I said that, God, I want him to ask me, what can I do for you? And exactly that was it. That was it exactly. And then God used him to pay for my fees all through my master's till I graduated. To God be the glory, through God's grace, through studying, through reading. Through doing my own part and aligning, myself to God's grace and all of that. I came out with a distinction. I came out with a distinction. So that's one of my great stories. It wasn't an easy journey for me at all. I remembered writing my project, and then my supervisor was after me. He wanted me to date him. It was really tough. It was so bad that I couldn't even submit my final project. My final project, I couldn't even submit it to him. I had to go give it to the HOD because he refused to collect it. It was that serious. But I never stopped trusting. I never stopped believing. God gave me the grace to say no to him. I remember on the day of my defense, he was telling me that you are not serious. You will meet me you would see me at the defense. Imagine someone is supposed to be, backing me up, and then saying that he's going to show me at my defense. But as God will have it, through prayers, I remember praying. I remember crying to God that, God, when I'm defending my project, this man wouldn't be there. And funnily, it was called out of that. I don't know where it went to, but it was not there. They were just external, professors that came, and then they were spent, and then I didn't even spend up to 5 minutes. It was just God's grace and His favor that saw me through, and then I graduated. He refused to collect the hard copy of my result. I had to submit it to the HOD of the department, back then. And then I mean, it was just a sweet experience that just made me to, God saw me through that process. God gave me the opportunity to be leaders over young ladies, like, people who are older than me. I had mentors, people guiding me, people who would, instruct my heart to say, this is what you should do, this is what you should not do, and, so far, I mean, God has showed up many times. I have many testimonies. Is in my relocation to Lagos, where I remembered in 2000, because I finished my master's in 2016, and I was like, God, I just knew it was time for me to leave Ibadan. I just knew it was time for me to leave Ibadan. I didn't know how I was going to go about it. I didn't know, I was not sure. I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to leave Ibadan. I remember, going to UI chapel and just praying to God. I was like, God, I'm not doing this because every other person is relocating and leaving town. I'm doing this because it is what you want me to do. Ha! I knew my sister was living in Lagos. So she was in Lagos. I was like, oh, okay, accommodation. I'll tell my sister. But I was like, God, what am I even going to Lagos to do? What is that plan that you have for me to do? What is that thing you want me to do in Lagos? Is it about me? It was about God's, I mean, what God is sending me to do here in Lagos and all. I remembered moving to Lagos. That move was a serious one. It was like they forced me to move. I didn't want to leave. As much as I wanted to leave my comfort zone, but I didn't want to leave my parents. I remember having to, one of my friends borrowed me the money to just come to Lagos. I didn't have it. She borrowed me 5K. I came to Lagos, stayed with my sister, and after a while, I was thinking, oh, okay, everything is all going to be fine, not going to be rosy. But I remember that year, 2017, God told me that this is your year of maturity. I didn't understand what it was. Like, this is my year of maturity. What does this mean? And as the year unfolds, I remember that my sister had to. I was thinking, okay, it's fine. It's just me and my sister. My sister is there for me, and my sister had to travel out of the country. It was just me. It was me and God, and the things that I had believed, all the lessons that I learned, the mentorship I had received. It was just me alone in Lagos. I remember there were nights where I was like, God, what's even happening? I remember nights where I would be so broke. I didn't have a job here in Lagos. I'm just, whoever that's living in Lagos living in Lagos as a single lady, it's not a funny experience. I had access to do whatever it is I wanted to do, hang out with guys, bring in, but no. God's the love and fear of God I had just kept me in one place. Like, there were days where I remember many times I'd gone hungry. I couldn't call the house because I know that, there's not so much going on at that time. We didn't have so much then. So what would I call? I didn't have a job. There was one night I was so frustrated. I sat on the bed and I started crying. I remember writing, journaling, because one of the things how I express myself the most is by journaling. I journaled it. I said, God, I don't know why I'm in Lagos. I really do not know. It was a frustrating experience for me. But I remember that sometimes in some of those situations, one of the things that just keeps me going is the peace of God I have. I prayed, cried, I slept up, woke up, until God brought opportunities my way. God brought people my way. I remember that I was like, God, I need to get a job. I need a job. I can't just sit down there. I don't have experience. And somebody came that there has to be the training for it's a graduate finishing academy where you learn all this. You teach you employability skills, so you can be employable. I didn't know anything was like that. It's, as I said, it's a process for me. It's not like I came to Lagos, bam, I got a job. No, I can tell you how I got my first job. Someone came to me. I went for a program in church. Then they sat beside me in church. Then God just glory. What that was her name? And she came to me, we just got talking. I met her that day, and then she told me about the opportunity. As I joined, it was a free program sponsored by the Swedish government or so. So they funded it, was fully funded. That's I from there I got my first job. When I got the first job, it was very, very difficult and tasking. It's just grace. Grace has found me. Grace has found me. Grace has found. If there's one thing I know, God, and I've never. For me, when I hear other people's story, I'm like, this never happened. How come this never happened to me? That some people, I've never jumped, that step. It's been one step, from one step to another. Every experiences of my life, I can tell you how I got to where I am. Is it even me being married? I can tell you how the relationship started. It was rocky. It was rocky. I know what I wanted in a man, but God said, no, this has to be it. And sometimes until you get into that fullness of God's will, you might not truly understand. You might not truly understand what God has prepared for you until you enter that God's will. For me, it's all about, I'm so passionate about God's will. Even if it's an investment decision I'm making, even if it's a business decision I'm making, I'm like, God, let your will be done. If there is, I said before this meeting, this is the same prayer I prayed, like at the tip of, I pray for Colossians chapter 1 verse 4 every single day of my life. Let the will of God, so it's for me, it's in God's will, walking in His will, He leading me, making choices, decisions. I remember God used that 2017 when I moved to Lagos to prune me. It was indeed, I looked at in December, I looked at my life in December 2017 and I said, God, truly, this year has been a year of maturity. There were days when I didn't even know what it's like to be, when somebody is fasting, you're not even sure if it's fasting or you are shadow food, so you just fast. It was what God saw me through my first job. I left my first job, I'm in 2018. I remember before I left the job, I was crying. I said, God, this kind of job I don't understand. But it was until I left the job, I knew why I was in the job. The volunteering, the experiences I've had volunteering with NGOs. God is just so much. I left my job. Then in 2018, I had to go back to brush up my learning. And you see this thing of leaving my job, and I started my own fashion institute, fashion enterprise. And then it's been, you see this, the business part of it, it's been running a business in Nigeria is not easy. If you really want to do it the God's way, do it in God's standard. It's not easy, but God's grace has really kept me pushing. Many times when I've been discouraged, frustrated, thought I should have found mentors, taking trainings, attending one coaching training or the other, being in one business development group or the other. I look back at it. It's a summary of everything. Is it the marriage? Is it the marriage? Is it the relationship? It was it's just God. I really am. I'm just short of words. Because I don't. At this point right now, I don't even know which one I'll talk about, which one I'll leave. God has indeed, seen me through it all. Is it when I had to end my relationship with the person I got married to now? At some point we said it and I didn't understand what we were doing then. I had to end it because I wanted clarity. Is it 3 months to the wedding when I didn't even know? I didn't even know what I was doing anymore. I wasn't even sure because a lot of things were happening at the same time, and how that 3 months to my date had already been fixed though. I had to go in December because we got married in March this year, March 21st. In December was when I was saying, I'm not even sure. Can this wedding hold? Do you really want to marry this person? because a lot of things were happening. But I remember going on a retreat in December, and I knew I was just praying. I said, God, I don't understand what is happening. What is, as in, everything is just looking like it looks like I'm losing everything. God, what's happening? Is this what it is? Are you really sure? Are you really the one in this relationship? Am I going into this marriage because everybody other person is getting married, or is this your will truly? Because these things I am seeing, I don't understand. And in the bit of saying, I think I don't care if our parents, our families have come to know each other. I just want to end it. I heard God say to me, I remember sharing with a friend and saying that God was telling me, I remember God saying to me that I've put this in your hands to build. I've given you this to build. And that's why, it's not easy building. It's not easy building. I had to submit myself to teachings. I had to take teachings, mentoring programs, mentoring sessions, I had to go, and then, although we are done counseling, but I had to seek counseling sessions again. I had to download messages, podcasts on marriage, on issues that are particular to marriage. Here I am, in God's will. It might not look like we want it, but the best of it is that what gives us comfort is when God's will. We're not outside His will, and sometimes it might not be so wonderful in the beginning, but as you go through it all, through the process, you will see that you will understand God's will. As you live the path He had written the script of our lives. So as we live the path, as we begin to see God's will. We begin to understand it. It might be your relationship. You're wondering, God, where do we even stand? Like, I'm tired. It might be on your job. I remembered I was working. I remembered working, and then I was still doing fashion. There was never a time I stopped fashion. So I was working in an 8 to 5 job. Sometimes, because I was like the senior one, I was after my boss. I was next. It was a consulting firm. As in, I would come back from work and still sew customers' clothes. It was challenging. My job, where I was spending hours in, was not. Sometimes my boss will owe me. He will not be able to pay me. I will use the money from my side job, my side hustle. Let me borrow that word. Also, that I was using to fund my work. That was one of the major reasons I had to leave. I had to say that how can I be working, investing so much time into a job, and then I'm owed money, and then it's my side also that is paying me. And I said no. That was one of the things that convinced me to say no. I don't want to take on this this job anymore. Let this job be. Let me face my business. I remember nights where I was so all through the night and still go to work the next day. You're going to work on Friday. You're saying, oh, I have the whole weekend to myself. My boss is telling you that there's a meeting in the office on Saturday morning, 7 a.m. And you're already scheduled. I would already have scheduled that, oh, I'll use this Saturday to. There was no time for me. I remembered there was a day on my 29th birthday. I think that wasn't. I remember we went out for marketing. My boss sent all of us out of the office that we're not bringing the money. And then we went. I remember sitting and I started crying. I was like, "Is this what I really want to do, God? What lesson are you?" I had to ask. I said, "God, what lesson are you teaching me?" I remember sitting on that stairs. I didn't even care who was looking at me. I sat down and it was my birthday that day. I was like, "Is this how I want to continue my life? Living a life of just there, just being there." God, I knew what you told me in 2016. I know how. I knew the promises. I said, and tears welled up in my eyes. I cried that day. I cried my eyes out that day. And then I picked it up, and I remember God saying to me, "My grace is sufficient for you." So, I continued the journey. I cleaned my eyes, dropped powder, and I continued, So many times when I'm faced with a challenge, I remember where I'm coming from. The challenge for me is something it might just magnify itself, but it's just the challenge as the other ones. That's how I see it. Many times I've been, is it when many times I've been depressed. The word of God kept me going. Sometimes I will not just even be interested in anything. All I just play songs, play messages, and that's it. I'm like, okay, that's my devotion this morning. But His grace has kept me. I never, when I see ladies going to, this all sort of things just to have money, I said I had opportunities. I had opportunities to be wayward. For example, I lived alone for 3 years in Lagos. I lived all alone in Lagos for 3 years. It never happened. Nothing of such happened because I was just God. I was like I was sold out to God. Like doing something contrary to God was like understand. So that's how my life so far had been a life of grace. Truly, been a life of grace.